Okay everyone, this is Avatar Sage 7 and today I'm going to be talking about whether it's worth playing Guild Wars 2 in 2021. I'm sure of course in the upcoming years the game will change somewhat, but we're going to be talking about this year specifically. So, literally speaking, at Guild Wars 2 I've spent around 1,714 hours from my record so far over the last 2 to 3 years playing this game, and I can tell you that it is among the best free-to-play MMOs or fantasy MMOs on the market right now. Well, in my opinion anyways, and the opinion of many others. So Guild Wars 2 definitely ranks among, if not at the top for now, in terms of the fantasy MMO genre. So the question for the fence sitters and the new players and perhaps players who are fence sitting and wondering whether they should return to this game if they played it before, is it worth playing in 2021? And is it going to survive in 2022? Well, I can for sure say that it will still be surviving into 2022. So, let's start with the good. So obviously one of the good parts of Guild Wars 2 is the story. So let's go into one of my characters, my Dragon Knight, Guardian Dragon Hunter. And yeah, so literally you're going to have access to at least the base game story if you get the free version of Guild Wars 2. Let me activate this. We look around, we're in the Lily of the Elon. And let's open up H, go to story journal. So literally your story and some of Scarlet's War and maybe Living Season World 2, up to that point is the base game. And that's the content that a free player who's not paying for the paid expansion. So obviously Guild Wars 2 is a free game. However, if you want to get the best parts of the story, you're probably going to have to shell out at least a bunch of dollars, especially if it's on sale. It's a lot more affordable. I think it's like around $20 or something like that combined, and you get a package with Hearth of Thorns and Path of Fire combined together. So the story is great. It's wonderful once you get to the expansions of, for example, Path of Fire and Heart of Thorns. And the maps in the Heart of Thorns are some of the best, and Path of Fire's story is good, but the map's not so great. And then things move on from there to Living Season World Season 4, and then the Iceberg Saga is the latest one, which then will eventually lead towards Kantha and the End of Dragons. So the Living World story is what Guild Wars 2 is known for. Well, mostly its story in general. And is it as amazing as Final Fantasy Online? A Realm Reborn and Shadowbringers, probably not on that level of storytelling skill, I would say. I myself have not finished Final Fantasy Online. But I can say it's pretty good. I would give it somewhere in the area of like 7 to 8 out of 10. It's not the most amazing, but certainly above the average grade of what you would get out of a typical MMO. And you'll definitely be invested in the characters like Ritlock, the First Revenant, who's a Char, Taimi, the engineer from the Asuras, and of course Aurene, the dragon that you help to both birth and raise. And of course I'm not going to spoil what happens to Aurene in the story. And so ever since ArenaNet had its downsizing some years back, they literally focused all of the resources on the Living World story to the exclusion of everything else, which is part of the bad, which you learn about later on. So, of course, now with the expansion that they have in the works and the End of Dragons storyline coming out, which will be the final showdown between the two Elder Dragons by about this point here in the Iceberg Saga, which is like Jormag and Primordius, I believe. Literally by that point, you'll be heading towards the new Asian-themed continent of Kantha, which was originally introduced in Guild Wars 1. So they'll be focusing less on Living World story, which they kind of are phoning in right now, and more on the expansion. So you can expect that they're going to be literally spending only less time on the story until that expansion is ready to go. So if you're a new player, you don't have to really worry that you'll have that you won't have any content to go through. You will have plenty of content up to about Heart of Thorns before you actually have to pay for these expansions and their additional more interesting parts of the story, let's just say. But this is enough to get you into the point of understanding what's going on, whether this game is totally for you. And for a casual, I think it definitely will be, as I will conclude later on. So, and of course, if you get during the holidays when it's on sale, you can definitely get a great deal on that. So yes, let's say what else is one of the pros of Guild Wars 2? The gear, and the gear grind is a great thing for casuals because it is another game that is like Elder Scrolls Online in that once you get the max level gear in this game, it's level 80, then you're set. Like, you never really have to regrind the same sorts of gear, types of gear type sets ever again once you have that set, because the level cap never goes up. It's all about just getting different sets of gear if you want. And so you never really have to keep grinding out higher and higher levels of gear like you would in World of Warcraft or Destiny 2, which I'm currently even exploring right now. And I'm finding that every season that they come out, they're literally increasing the gear cap by like 50 points. So every time, your gear is always going to go out of date for the latest content. So you have to regrind the gear, new gear, all over again, of which they have solved, but that's for a Destiny video, so I'm not going to go any further into that. They've solved it, kind of. So in this game, you only really need exotic gear at most to enjoy almost everything in this game. So literally exotic class, level 80 gear is all you really need to enjoy the base game as a casual player. And you only need Ascended Purple gear if you intend to run modes like dungeon modes like Fractals, which are like random dungeons in mysterious outer planes of mist, necessarily. And they have their own rewards, of course. And so that's the only time you actually need Ascended gear. Most players don't even ever bother with Fractals, so they don't even bother with Ascended, but you can, and certainly you can aim for that if you want. So unlike games, like I said, Final Fantasy Online, Destiny 2, World of Warcraft, you can literally take a break from this game for months on end and still come back and enjoy any of the new content just fine without having to grind gear ever. And that is probably one of the major top points of this game, besides the story aspect and the lore aspect of it. So what else is there that is a pro for this game? The combat system. Guild Wars 2 probably has some of the best action tab targeting hybrid combat in the MMO market that I know of. And yes, you can tab target if you want, like you do in World of Warcraft. But all you really have to do is blast and aim and blast in order to, launch something. So literally some of the abilities here, I'm spinning for a pull. I've got leaps, and you can see the animations for this combat are pretty good. They're not on the level of like Black Desert Online or Terra, anything that's so flashy that literally causes the entire screen to flash with bright, vibrant colors or anything like that, of course. And then the sword thing, blocking and hurling up blades, shields, strikes, symbols on the ground. So literally speaking, the combat in here is pretty smooth for a hybrid combat system. And I mean, I can literally just dodge by double tapping. Not enough energy, though I do wish it had unlimited dodging energy. That's the only thing I do have a kind of minor gripe myself. It's a personal thing, really. But otherwise, it's a great system. It aims well, so you just point and you can literally target. And tab targeting is optional, so if I press tab, I can literally tab around, but these guys aren't enemies, so it doesn't really matter. And the combat skills and moves, like I said, are fluid and fast-paced, and there's really no clunkiness besides maybe the dodging part. So, like I said, it's not on the level of Black Desert Online or Terra or Vindictus. However, it's pretty solid, so I would probably give it like 6, 7, 8 maybe, and the tab targeting is probably in the 6 to 7.5 zone. If one had to give it a kind of rating of sorts, I mean, mileage depends on you. So if you're really into action combat systems and like high-level Phantasy Star Online, jumping and hurling blades and dropping down and causing massive destruction, then obviously Guild Wars 2 isn't going to match that level of combat animations. But generally speaking, as it goes, there is a certain impact level with Guild Wars 2's animations and combat systems, such that it's enough to please most people. It just won't please most hardcore action combat fans. So what else is there going for Guild Wars 2 that makes it an excellent free-to-play MMO? Well, its open world is some of the best. It's probably one of the strongest points of Guild Wars 2, and its level design. So the zones are literally segregated and instant open world zones that are very large, and they allow for plenty of exploration. So let me bring up the map here. You can literally see that's just one area of one zone, a crystal oasis, and then there's desert highlands, and you can see just how much content there is for a new player to explore. Like literally all the base game content is somewhere up here. This is expansion content down here from Path of Fire. Heart of Thorns is mostly in this area here in the heart of the Maguma, and this is all still base game up to Steamspur Mountains. Some of this is expansion here, but most of this Ruins of Ore is from the first the free-to-play base game here. That's Heart of Thorns related. So literally gigantic zones, lots to do, endless repeatable events in the open world, and bosses that you can fight. I can't really show you the boss locations, and a lot of them are on timers, so that literally you go to the wiki and it will tell you when the boss will exactly spawn. And entire groups of players will then gather, and all you have to do is drop in and land even one single hit to get credit for slaying that boss, if you're really that lazy, of course. So, like I said, the world boss events and the events themselves are probably the biggest thing. It's literally the massive group community, the communal nature of the open world that is some of the biggest draws for Guild Wars 2 compared to many other games, which are all focused on, crawling dungeons and whatnot, and mostly solo story playing. Like in Elder Scrolls Online, yes, you can group with people, but you can usually, yes, you can also land hits there too and fight world bosses in huge groups, but compared to the size of the groups that you see in Guild Wars 2, where you can have 50 to 100 players attacking a single world boss, and I've never really seen more than 50 to 100 players attacking only a world boss in Alakir Desert ESO, for example. Most of the time it's like maybe 3, 4, 5 people at most who can wipe the floor in Elder Scrolls. Here it's a huge community event. For example, one of the more popular ones is fighting the Mega Destroyer down in the Steamspur Mountains in Mount Maelstrom here at the Maelstrom Waypoint. Literally an entire boss spawning there, and hundreds of players blasting that thing. It's definitely not a sight to miss, at least for the first few times. And like I said, you can just literally just drop into these events when you notice people heading towards them, or you're passing by, and literally get credit for them. So this drop in and join nature of Guild Wars 2 is one of the things that makes it extremely popular as a game, despite the fact that in the con section that I'll discuss, the dungeon raids and PvP are not the highlights of it. This is probably the most popular PvE activity pretty much for the entire game, is the open world itself, the world bosses, the events on timers, the repeatable events that occur that you might have to do for the story or quests, or just to get loot in general. So another big pro, for Guild Wars 2, of course, is the community. And Guild Wars 2 probably has one of the friendliest communities that I've ever encountered, an experience that's pretty much echoed by a lot of other players and reviewers and streamers and the normal casuals who play this game, because maybe, yes, there'll be one or two bad apples every once in a while in the chat, but most of the people here in this game are like absolutely wonderful sorts who will help you whether or not you ask, and especially even if you ask, for sure they'll probably help you too, and even if you don't, they will. And because this game is all about cooperation, you even get experience for resurrecting and reviving people. Like, people will just immediately come over and just resurrect you because they know that you'll do the same for them as well, because of the incentive, but also because it's just the thing to do in Guild Wars 2 is to help other players. There are bounty trains, there are hero point trains for skilling up. Literally, you can find those in the looking for group under all sorts of areas, Heart of Thorns, Verdant Brink. There's like groups running metas at any one time of guilds and players. Literally a massive community, very friendly. You can go to some of the grinding zones and find groups to join in, and they're perfectly fine at whatever level you happen to be when you get there, doing it, of course. And no one's ever going to insult you about that or anything like that. Usually, I would probably say 90 to 95% of the time. So in terms of the new player friendliness, this game is great. And so I know I've for sure done my part every once in a while to help a few players who ask for help, or fight a world boss or a champion boss that might be on a map that players need help with, and I'm passing by, and then you just drop it and just do it anyway. So it's great. Another massive advantage with Guild Wars 2 is that it's not a pay-to-win game. The microtransactions are exceptionally reasonable. In fact, if I were to say anything about it, it would be that it's almost on par with grinding gear games who makes Path of Exile perhaps better, because literally everything you can do in-game to make gold, you can convert that to gems through the Blackline Trading Company, through gem conversion currency exchange here. So you can turn your in-game gold here into actual gems, which you can then use to buy cosmetics if you want, or other utility items like expansion space or transmog transmutation charges to change the look of your gear, or things like that, or style. So like I said, you could add capes or cat fur stuff. I mean, cat ear hood skins, just by simply paying gold, converting it to gems, and then purchasing the cosmetic, which can also be bought with real world money, of course. But Guild Wars 2 gives you the option to actually spend absolutely no money if you desire, but players still support the game by, of course, still spending some real world money to purchase cosmetics and utility items in the game. So comparatively speaking, that's, in my book, probably even better than Path of Exile, which only has cosmetics, and mostly it really pushes the inventory space for storing all that loot. Here, though, yes, you can buy inventory space to store loot, but you can also grind the gold, and it can actually be converted to their premium currency, which are the gems. So, yeah, that's literally one of the best options, or I could say pros, of this game. And of course, you can also grind the same currency to unlock chapters of the story which you haven't played through if you don't intend to buy the expansions, whether they're at full price, on sale, bundled price, whatever. You can actually buy these with gems if you don't have them. I think they cost about 500 gems, so if you look at it that way, 500 gems would be how much gold? Almost 100 and something, 125, 150 gold that you'd have to earn in-game to unlock each chapter one by one. It takes plenty of work, but it can be done, and that's the beauty of it. You have the option to do so. So what are some of the cons or bad things about Guild Wars 2 that still exist even now in 2021 at this moment? It may change in the future, may not. The first one would be content droughts. Like I said before, they have focused most of their efforts on Living World stories, so the content drought wasn't quite so bad in recent years, but it has been slow in general. It could take months, 3 months, 6 months for a chapter or section of their Icebrew Saga, for example, to appear. I think lately it's been pretty fast for these last few. But some of these took like between 3 to 6 months, which is a bit longer than the usual 3 to 4 months that other games might release major content updates like Elder Scrolls Online or Final Fantasy Online anyways. And so it's been a bit slow for regularly updating the story content and the content in general compared to other MMOs. And so, of course, now that they're focusing on the End of Dragons and the Cantha expansion coming up in 2021, 2022, who knows exactly when. That's the whole point of the slow content release. I don't even know when it's going to be. Then you can expect that this Living World series is going to get somewhat slower. Probably. It's not guaranteed. They might still have enough people to make it happen at a reasonable pace. Some other cons also involve the dungeons in this game, and the dungeons exist. These are 4-man dungeons. Let's see, looking for group dungeons. These are all the dungeons they have in this game, compared to Elder Scrolls Online, which has like, I don't know, 40, 50 dungeons. They haven't added many new dungeons at all. In fact, these are all old dungeons. They've been here since the base game. These are almost all base game dungeons, practically. It's just maybe the popularity just wasn't there, the story wasn't good enough, or they just never put enough emphasis to improve the dungeons. The dungeons themselves haven't changed since the game launched, I think, or since the game past Season 2 or something like that. Living World Season 2. So, like I said, compared to the open world, these dungeons just aren't that popular. It's hard to find players to join up in them usually, unless it's a daily at the time. Oh, look, unless they're doing the story too. Sometimes, if they're doing the story, you might find. See, story. Some of these are mandatory. You have to do them in order to finish the base game's story. So that's why you might find a rare group. But otherwise, these dungeons are almost never run, practically empty, unless it's a daily as well. Raids are the 6 to 12 man sort of super dungeons that you might find, which are called Trials in Elder Scrolls Online, or well, they're still called Raids or something. I think still in Destiny 2, if I'm correct. And there's also major sort of missions like that in Star Wars: The Old Republic. These kinds of game modes probably don't even exist. I'm not even sure they have a raid section. Let me take a look here. Oh no, they do. And there's a few, mostly the one that does legendary armor. These rarely get updated practically, so wow, 1 out of 10. I'm sure it's quite difficult to find enough people to do raids in this game, as I said. So literally, so these are 10-man raids, not 6 to 12. And yeah, they're pretty much in the same shape as dungeons. ArenaNet really hasn't spent any focus on them because there hasn't been enough player interest in them, probably because it's a chicken before the egg before the chicken, so they don't spend any effort, and therefore there's no player interest, and therefore they don't spend any effort because there's no player interest. And so if you're one of those hardcore endgame raiders from other games like Elder Scrolls Online, you would be disappointed to find that there is no such thing as dungeon running or raiding in Guild Wars 2. It's all open world stuff, open world events, living world stories, things like that. There are some strike missions that are now opened up in the Eye of the North, which are very fast kind of little mini raids for like groups of 4 to 6 or something like that. And they're certainly not very involved. They literally just involve you attacking one boss in a room practically, and then killing him somehow. And then there's Fractals, another game mode that they have. I'm not going to go run over to that place. There's Portals in Lion's Arch. And it too is a not that popular game mode. Only a small amount of people play these randomized dungeons that are kind of like Nephilim Rifts from Diablo 3 or the map endgame from Path of Exile. So they're just a whole bunch of random 4-man dungeons that you run through that have all sorts of weird conditions. They can be, burning, heat, reduced health. Enemies might have do fire damage to you or something like that. I'm not sure that's actually true, that part anyways, but I do know that they might have buffs or something like that, or there might be areas that you can't cross that have like poisonous gas or something. I mean, it's all sorts of wacky things, or there's a snowstorm and you have to do a specific mechanic to defeat it. And so those are Fractals, and they too, like dungeons, that mode is practically not very popular, or mostly dead for the most part. So what's another con for this game is practically the graphics. As you can tell, it's a very painted look, these graphics. It still looks kind of good. I'm on a GTX 1660 Ti, obviously. My graphics are turned up for ultra level detail, but my shadows are totally killed off because that's a huge performance hit. And you can see that there is some level of acceptable details, a painted, animated sort of look. The cosmetics are extremely flashy, extremely eye-catching, so this is better than Elder Scrolls Online for sure. Is it better than Black Desert? Hard to say. I don't really play that game because it's too grindy even for me by reputation. So yeah, I mean, literally speaking, the graphics are not exactly the most amazing. I think the base version is DirectX 9, not 11. I say that in my written post, but I think it's DirectX 9. I upgraded to DirectX 12 with a mod. And of course, this isn't a deal breaker, the graphics, but those who enjoy top-notch modern graphics, like some of my friends that I used to know, who would prefer to play games like on high resolution, uh, high shadow detail, and all that other stuff, ambient occlusion, everything like that, would probably find this game to be quite disappointing. The graphics, textures, and meshes are, like I said, probably uh, not even probably not even better than Elder Scrolls Online by much, if at all. The only thing that this game has going for it is the incredible animations for their cosmetics. And Guild Wars 2 probably won't have the manpower or resources to change the graphics engine anytime soon, which has also served to limit the size of their maps and zones, apparently. What else is a bit of a con? I mean, not a major con, but their classes is one of them, and it's pretty much that they haven't introduced new classes or specializations in a very long time. So if you're expecting new classes to play with, new builds to work with, they literally have not. Updated the mechanics at all. Like, it's still the same sort of mechanics that they use for swords and shields and whatnot. There's no changes to that mechanic to make it more fresh or improved or exciting or anything like that. So I won't show you the 9 classes, but they're like literally 9 classes, each of them with 2 to 3 elite upgrade paths. So I guess technically speaking, there's a lot of build options and varieties for you to sort of choose them from if you want. In terms of path, elite class specializations. But the thing is, like I said, there hasn't been any major overhauls except when it comes to tweaking the abilities, duration or damage, and little things like that for PvP. And the mechanics haven't changed. So if you're looking to try new classes and builds, you're probably going to get bored once you've played through every class and every specialization, because literally every character in here, they can get enough skill points that, let me see here. Yes, they can get enough skill points to get both of the elite specializations. So these are 2 elites. Sorry, it's not 2 to 3 elite specializations. Generally speaking, only 2 elite specializations per class. So technically, you would have 9 alts, and each of them would have both of the current elite specializations. So I can literally switch between these 2 just by using their new build system that allows me to switch the build tabs. They implemented this probably like a year at most ago. Same with their abilities. Here you can now change the entire layout or loadout of your abilities and your gear just by switching tabs. But you must pay for these, or sorry, I would say you have to use premium currency of gems, which you can pay with gold or real world money. It's about roughly 400 gems or so, so about 100 gold. So what else is another major challenge? Major issue with this game? I guess you could say PvP is sort of a major issue. It is sort of good, but there are times when there are certain metas or OP builds that will literally ruin the fun of PvP, especially in, the duels or 4-man PvP. And so balancing issues and being overpowered is a problem in player versus player in Guild Wars, and a lot of players have just simply stopped bothering with PvP for that reason, unless they themselves are also playing overpowered builds for PvP modes. And of course, the big one is world versus world, which is like, lots of players, 50s, 100s maybe, who are attacking keeps of other players. And so that's like Cyrodiil's PvP from Elder Scrolls Online and other sort of MMO games out there, though I guess Black Desert Online is all PvP, really. So you can roam around and take over keeps and land and camps. And the problem with World versus World in Guild Wars 2 is that they built it. The game is named Guild Wars 2, but you can't actually use your guilds in World versus World. You can only people on the same server can fight together. So even if you're in the same guild with someone, but if they're on a different server, you literally cannot play with them, which is a major downside of World versus World. Players have complained and asked Guild ArenaNet to fix this for a long time, and ArenaNet has said that they will do it, but it hasn't happened anytime, and it still probably won't happen anytime soon, considering how much resources they have to spend at any one moment. And since they're focused on the expansion, I doubt we're going to see any improvements to world versus world, player versus player mode. So the conclusion of is Guild Wars 2 worth playing in 2021? Considering overall that this game is free, the base game anyways, for sure. So for new players, literally, you can literally pay for any microtransaction with in-game gold if you grind enough of it. I could easily recommend this MMO to any new player to try without fear. Now, if you are a returning player or fence sitter who's thinking of trying this game, well, I guess if you're a fence sitter, you fall in the new player category. But if you're a returning player, then obviously you know about many of these issues, and now you've just learned that again, they probably haven't changed by much of anything, really. It's still the same game it was before, just like the way the gear works. So, anyways, regardless of that, the great story, I mean, the fast-paced hybrid combat system, the open world events, and the amazing community just make Guild Wars 2 probably the best free-to-play fantasy MMO on the market, in my opinion, at the moment. I mean, no other one probably beats this in the fantasy genre anyways, unless, no, probably not even the ones from Korea, in my opinion. The major downsides, however, are the content is slow to come out, like real slow. I'm not even sure how long that expansion to Kanta is going to take. And much of the existing content classes or mechanics haven't really been overhauled in a long time, besides when it comes to PvP, where they're trying to do balancing, but it's still kind of imbalanced with overpowered builds. And they're still working on that, and it's a balancing act. So would I recommend this game in 2021 for the completely and utterly new player looking to try the waters? Absolutely. For the returning player who dropped this game, I don't know why you would. Well, I mean, literally you can return to it any time because your gear never goes out of date at all. Then you could probably still come back to it. It's still worth playing casually in 2021. The only thing I would say is that I personally don't consider Guild Wars 2 to be my main MMO of choice usually, because mostly because of the fact that it's just the content's just so slow to come out. That the only reason why it's still only my side MMO is because A, it's still a decent game, B, the gear grind is practically non-existent, and C, I can come back to this game at any time and I'll still be just fine. I can play it. Play the new content, new story, log in every day and still get the chapters, and still enjoy it without having to do very much work. So, I mean, hell, why not? Once you get the expansion, it's not like you pay a subscription fee, as far as I know, right? So, you can literally just, keep your account. You don't have to delete it or lose it ever. And that is essentially my sort of review of Guild Wars 2 for 2021, and whether you should play it, it totally depends on whether the cons are deal breakers for you or not. Okay, well, anyways, if you enjoyed this review of Guild Wars 2, and feel free to subscribe to my channel, leave some likes down below, and best of all, if you can spare it, support me through Subscribestar. The Subscribestar link is also down below as well, and that really helps to, of course, keep my my creative juices going, and keep me streaming about games and reviewing them and testing them out. I've also done a lot with we're working on games like Outrider and of course Destiny 2 from a completely new player experience. I must say that game's pretty deep. So yeah, hopefully I will catch you next time, and signing out.